Welcome to the first of 5 videos in the Presentation Tips series. I'll start off by sharing one of the most powerful messages I learned through a presentation skills training course that I did a few years back. The message was simple, but it gave me a perspective I didn't have before, and it allowed me to approach presentations in a way that I'd never attempted before. The simple message was, it's not about you. It's all about your audience. It's true that everyone's attention is on you, but what we often forget is that our audience is there, giving us their precious time and attention for something in return. This something may be as simple as learning the latest update on a project, or finding out all the facts they need in order to make a decision or take a next step. Or perhaps it's within an academic setting, and it's about understanding and assessing whether you've been able to meet the goals of an assignment. Whatever this return may be is really the key to approaching presentations. And when you think about it this way, it becomes quite intuitive and reduces the stress level around, creating presentation decks and actually giving presentations. So it doesn't matter that everyone's attention is on you. This does not mean that you have an opportunity to talk about yourself and how well you've done things. It's also not about being perfect and knowing all the answers. And it's certainly not meant as a way for you to prove your worth. What will matter at the end is whether you respected and appreciated the time and attention that was given to you by your audience, and whether you actually managed to get something out of it and not waste their time. Often when people start to build a perception of someone, it's not the details and specifics they remember. It's more the big picture and the feeling they leave with after an interaction with you. Of course, if you go and say something outrageous, it will be remembered and it will likely work its way into that person's perception of you, but that's another topic for another day. This is such an important point that I really want to drive it home, and I'll give you 2 examples. I'll give you a scenario where you are approaching the presentation as if it was all about you. And I'll try to speak for the audience and what they are perceiving and feeling as you go through this presentation. I'll then go through the same thing this time with you focusing on your audience rather than making it about yourself. And we'll see how the audience feels at that time. When it's all about you, it will look something like this. You start the meeting and presentation by apologizing for being late, and you start to give a backstory about the meeting that ran late beforehand, or the people that were waiting, or the technology difficulty that you had. At this point, your audience, who's already been waiting a few minutes, is thinking, I don't care. Get going, stop wasting my time. You finally get into the project update and you start to go into the details of how there was an issue that took longer to resolve because there were people on the team that really weren't being team players, and it just made everything difficult and so forth. The whole time you're giving this update, your audience is sitting there and trying to figure out, is the issue resolved or is it still pending? Do I need to do something about it? Do I need to fix the issue? Do I need to talk to someone's manager because they're not being team players? What do you want me to do? And then you move on into talking about how you handle a conversation with, let's say, a vendor really well, and you were able to complete all the work package perfectly within the timelines that were expected because you did such a good job through this communication that you had with this vendor. And at this point, your audience is trying to figure out, okay, so what did the vendor do? Are you just telling me that you did your job? Are you telling me you did your job really well? What am I supposed to do about it right now? I mean, great, good for you. You finally remember to throw in there that the project is actually in green status and there are no risks or issues to raise. And here, your audience is thinking, that's it? I don't need to do anything? Everything's progressing well, on time, green status? That was such a waste of my time. This meeting could have been an email. The impression that your audience may leave with at the end of this meeting is one of anxiety, annoyance, and perhaps even thinking, waste of my time. So now let's go through that again, and this time it's not about you, it's about your audience. You start the presentation and thank your audience for being patient and waiting and giving you their time and attention. Your audience at this point is thinking, you're late, but okay, fine, let's just get going. you jump in to sharing the goals and objectives of the meeting, which in this case is to provide a project update, and you make it very clear right off the start that there is no approvals needed, no decisions needed, and no actions that are immediately required of anyone. Your audience is like, great, okay, so let's hear the updates. They're right there with you, they know what they're supposed to do, they know what's expected of them. You follow quickly with the project status, the latest milestones that were achieved, and the next steps towards reaching the next milestone. Your audience is right there with you, engaged, listening, and taking in all the information you're sharing with them. At this point, you pause and you ask for any questions or whether there's any other topics related to the project that anyone wants to discuss. As your audience, because I have been quite actively engaged in the whole presentation and I've been taking in everything you've said and I've been processing, I may have some questions about the project or the next steps. Once all the questions are answered and everything is resolved, you adjourn the meeting. Your audience is thinking, that was great. I feel great. It was a good, productive meeting. I got all the information I needed and I know exactly what I need to do. The impression they take away from this interaction and this meeting or presentation is one of feeling calm and accomplished, and perhaps even thinking to themselves, you know what, I'll make time for this person if they need my time because it was a good experience. So I think I've driven that point home now. It's not about you. It's all about your audience. Now that we've got that covered, the next step is to figure out who your audience is. And for that, please stay tuned for video 2 of 5 in the Presentation Tips series.